Good morning. Hope your Monday's off to a great start. I've been feeling just so incredibly blessed lately, and one thing I realized was that more than ever, I've been surrounded by a veritable army of pastors and advisors, and I just feel so blessed. I want to share that. Even here at Epiphany, just in the last 48 hours, I've gotten to work with Rick, do a couple services, and Father Vince and I had a long conversation. And I was thinking about all the pastors and priests and guides in my life, and I thought, even my wife is a pastor to me. I'm pretty confident I learn more from her than she does from me, and it feels so incredibly blessed by the goodness that I'm just learning from so many people. And to add, to those who have, more is given, says God. I have friends, too, that just provide so much wisdom and guidance. And I want to share a story with permission from one of those friends. I have his explicit permission to share this. He was telling me about how an acquaintance/friend of his contacted him recently and sort of was like getting a little in his face. Like, what you doing? I'm going to come over and, hey, blah, blah. And he realized how his introverted self was really getting triggered. And he was being impatient and unkind with his friend. And suddenly he sort of caught himself right in the middle of his lack of kindness and said, wow, I work as a restaurant manager and a waiter at Mandalay Bay, but I haven't worked for 8 or 9 weeks. And my hospitality muscles, my listening skills, my ability to deal and interact with people, which doesn't come as easily to an introvert, are out of shape. My muscles have gone slack during COVID. And the second he had that realization, he became more compassionate with his friend. And I tell this story because I think we all might learn as we're coming out of COVID, whatever that means, whether life's going to be normal tomorrow or 18 months from now or ever, we're dealing with the fact, and it is a fact, not a theory. We know we've gone 8 or 9 weeks in a very changed lifestyle, and there are probably losses that we need to acknowledge. Like my friend acknowledged his hospitality muscles are out of shape. I've had to acknowledge that my LVAC muscles are out of shape. I haven't been going to the health club at all, and it used to be a 5 or 6 day a week thing. And my body, which is absolutely dependent on physical therapy because of a car wreck, hasn't been getting enough. And I need to acknowledge that it's been a step back for me. I am weaker. I am coming from a more broken place. And to be aware of that's always a good thing as an element of being gentle and truthful with ourselves. I've got a Bible message to attach to this idea of being honest with ourselves, being gentle, being kind, but admitting and taking account of what our losses have been. They might not just be financial or that we've had to put up with isolation. There might be emotional, physical, spiritual weakening as a cause of the COVID virus. And that's true in church work too. There's some people, they're very, in a healthy way, so interdependent with the community here and also for some the sacraments of the church, that to have none for 8 weeks, they feel like their spirit has been weakened. If that's the case, it's important to acknowledge that and to share that concern with God and see if God can't help correct us. Speaking of another great pastor, I learned something about 20 years ago from a minister who had to do the funeral for a 5-year-old who was killed tragically. And it's a family I knew well. The girl was involved in the same preschool as my daughters. And in terms of handling it, I probably did the very worst possible. I was so angry at God. And going to the funeral was just something I couldn't even imagine being the parent of that child. There was just so much pain. There was so much injury. And it was hard to comprehend and take it all into account. But the minister of that day, in her genius, offered up the most unexpected psalm, and I'd like to introduce you to it if you don't know it well. It's Psalm 131. And I'll begin with its old form, the King James. And here's how it goes in the King James Version. Psalm 131. Lord, my heart is not haughty, nor mine eyes lofty. Neither do I exercise myself in great matters or in things too high for me. Surely I have behaved and quieted myself as a child that is weaned of his mother. My soul is even as a weaned child. Let Israel hope in the Lord from henceforth and forevermore. I'm going to read another translation. Psalm 131 is what we're studying this morning. As an aid to be gentle with ourselves and to accept God's peace, even as we're acknowledging that we might be more broken, more lost, out of shape, physically, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. It's okay. And God will help us restore what we need to restore in the speed we need to restore it. Live in that confidence. I'll do the NIV version of Psalm 131. Let me give you a little tip. If you look at a translation of Psalm 131 and it does not have the word weaned in it, find one that does. That would include the NRSV, which took the word weaned out. I'm stopping there. Here from the NIV. My heart is not proud, Lord. My eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me. But I have calmed and quieted myself. I am like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child, I am content. Israel, put your hope in the Lord, both now and forevermore. Let's, at this stage of the virus, this stage of quarantine, this stage of the discussion about opening up the world and returning to normalcy, let's continually put our hope in the Lord and receive from that same Lord this second, this morning, throughout this day, every hour of this day. Let's know that God is totally okay with the fact that we may have gotten weaker in some ways. We may not be as polite. We may be driving Las Vegas streets more aggressively, which people are. But that's why. They've lost their driving jobs. We're going to be patient with ourselves. We're going to love ourselves. We're going to be calm like a weaned child because we know God loves us like a father and a mother. Have a great Monday.